In 1970, Ford built an engine so revolutionary, so wild, so ahead of its time, it didn't just win races. It threatened to dismantle the muscle car empire, but within 2 years, it vanished. Was it outlawed or betrayed? What happened that they had to kill it before it took over the streets? Sounds like a conspiracy, right? Though in reality, the Boss 302 wasn't just another V8. It was a precision-built weapon, a high-revving monster. So why did Ford shut it down? Was it too fast, too dangerous, or did it threaten something bigger? It's the late 1960s, and the muscle car wars is a battlefield. Chevy has the Camaro Z28. Dodge is throwing Hemis at everything. Plymouth is flexing its road runners, and even AMC is punching above its weight. Every automaker is fighting tooth and nail, not just to be fast, but to be the fastest. This wasn't just about horsepower. It was about bragging rights. It was about proving on the streets and on the track who built the ultimate American muscle car. And Ford? They knew showing up with just another big block V8 wasn't going to cut it. They needed something different. Something that didn't just go fast in a straight line, but could out-handle, out-rev, and outlast the competition. A Mustang that wasn't just muscle, but precision. Meet the masterminds. Larry Shinoda, the maverick designer behind the Boss 302 Mustang's aggressive stance, and engineer Bill Barr, who fused a Windsor block with Cleveland heads, creating a 290 horsepower, 7,000 RPM screamer. Built in Ford's Dearborn plant, this engine wasn't just power, it was poetry. The Boss wasn't about curves or chrome. It was about fear. I wanted Chevy drivers to look in their rearview mirrors and see that car coming like a hammer. And by God, they did. Let's get one thing straight. He wasn't just sketching a new Mustang. He was crafting a street-legal predator, a machine with racing DNA pumping through its veins. A high-revving, precision-engineered monster built to humiliate anything that dared to line up against it. Shinoda knew brute force alone wouldn't win this battle. He needed balance, precision, and relentless speed. The result makes everyone's eyes roll. A Mustang that could scream past 7,000 RPM, grip the road like a race car, and make the competition question their existence. Ford wanted to obliterate the opposition. And the Boss 302? That was their master plan to gain monopoly in the muscle car industry and begin a new era for Ford. But then Ford's own execs panicked. The Boss 302 wasn't just beating Chevrolets, it was outrunning Ford's profit-heavy big blocks. Why buy a 429 when a 302's faster? Dealers whispered. They had unleashed the Boss to be a street-legal race weapon that was born to rule. But the real question remains, was it too good for its time? They took the best of two worlds, a lightweight Windsor block for agility and Cleveland-style heads designed for insane airflow and high RPMs. The result? A high-strung beast that didn't just roar. It screamed past 7,000 RPM like an unleashed banshee, begging to tear up the pavement. Most engines were all about low-end torque and straight-line brutality. On the other hand, the Boss 302 was built differently. It thrived on revs, precision, and race-inspired engineering. It was a ticking time bomb of performance, ready to detonate on any track or open road. If Ford had something this special, why did they pull the plug? Was it really about regulations? Or was there something else at play? Now, if you ask Ford, they'll give you the standard corporate excuses like emissions regulations, changing racing rules. Inside Ford's boardroom, the Boss 302 was a ticking time bomb. Sales of the 428 Cobra jet plummeted. It's cannibalizing our lineup. One exec fumed. Meanwhile, mechanics like Smokey Unick leaked stories of secret Boss 302X prototypes with aluminum blocks, axed before they hit streets. But then the insurance crisis hit. Rates for muscle cars tripled. Ford blamed safety, but leaked documents reveal a darker truth. A $20 million deal with insurers to prioritize big block models. The boss was collateral damage. There's a strong theory floating around among muscle car enthusiasts, and it's not some wild conspiracy. It suggests that Ford may have intentionally sabotaged its own masterpiece, and the reason? The Boss 302 was simply too good. This precision-built, high-revving street machine was doing the unthinkable. It wasn't just keeping up with Ford's lineup of heavy-hitting, high-priced, big-block engines. It was beating them at their own game. The Boss 302 was lean, agile, and outrageously responsive. It could tear through corners with grace, rev faster than anyone thought possible, and keep going long after the others started to fade. It was proof that bigger didn't always mean better. A small block was now delivering the same thrills, if not more, than the gas-guzzling giants Ford had banked on for years. And here's the kicker. It was more affordable, more reliable, more fun. But that also meant fewer people wanted the heavy, expensive, big block cars. And when your most exciting product is undercutting your biggest profit makers, that's not just a performance problem, that's a business crisis. Ford had no real incentive to keep selling an affordable, race-proven machine that was outperforming their larger, more expensive engines. The Boss 302 was quietly embarrassing Ford's own flagship engines. The high-margin, gas-hungry big blocks like the 428 and 429 were supposed to be the crown jewels. They brought in bigger profits and carried a certain prestige. Yet here came this lightweight, high-revving underdog, proving that precision engineering could topple brute force. The Boss 302 was disrupting Ford's own business model, and in the world of corporate strategy, that kind of internal competition is a threat that rarely survives. So instead of letting it evolve, Ford buried it, silenced it, cut it down just as it was about to reach its full potential. And then we come to the infamous insurance crisis, a turning point that hit the muscle car world like a freight train. By the early 70s, these cars were getting so powerful, so lightning fast, that insurance companies started to sound the alarm. They were terrified. Young drivers were pushing these machines to their limits, and accidents were piling up. What came next stunned the automotive world. Insurance rates for high-performance cars skyrocketed overnight. Suddenly, owning a muscle car was no longer just about the thrill of horsepower or the roar of the engine. It turned into a financial storm that caught everyone off guard. Insurance premiums shot through the roof, and what once felt like freedom on four wheels quickly became a burden for everyday families. Drivers who simply craved a little speed were punished with sky-high costs. These cars, once seen as the pride of American engineering, were now being painted as threats to public safety. Powerful street machines were branded as too dangerous for the average person, and the dream of owning a performance car began to fade for the very people who built the culture around it. So what happened next? The pressure started mounting, not just from insurers, but from regulators, lawmakers, and even public opinion. And Ford? They saw the writing on the wall. The Boss 302, with its track-bred engineering and race car DNA, was suddenly a threat to Ford's image and bottom line. Rather than face a storm of lawsuits and angry insurance companies, Ford made a decision. They pulled the plug. Those Cleveland-style heads were game changers. Designed for maximum airflow, they turned the Boss 302 into a natural-born powerhouse, ready to scream past 7,000 RPM without breaking a sweat. This engine was not just meant to rev high. It was engineered to be pushed beyond its limits. In the 1970s, tuners who understood its potential went wild. They bolted on superchargers, installed turbo kits, and squeezed out well over 700 horsepower. That is not an exaggeration. That is real history. Picture a 1969 Mustang going head-to-head with a modern-day Hellcat and holding its ground. Sounds unreal, but it happened. The Boss 302 was decades ahead of its time. It was a glimpse into the future, wrapped in Detroit steel and roaring with raw attitude. And then comes the mystery, the whispers, the backroom talk. Because somewhere in Ford's archives, or maybe deep in some collector's garage, there were experimental Boss 302s, built in silence, tuned in secret, high-lift camshafts, forged internals, even aluminum blocks to shave off weight and boost performance. These were not production cars. These were street-legal monsters, prototypes that could have redefined the muscle car era. Ford never released them, never advertised them. Why? Because unleashing them would have changed the game forever. The truth is, Ford may have built something too powerful, too advanced, and too dangerous for its time. And instead of rewriting history, they chose to hide it in the shadows. It was a revolution under the hood, a precision-built monster that could outrun, outlast, and outshine the competition. It was raw, untamed power, engineered to perfection. And yet, Ford pulled the plug before it could truly leave its mark. Why? Was it too advanced, too dominant, or simply too good for its own time? The answer should be all of the above. The Boss 302 found its soul on the track. Drivers like Parnelli Jones and George Follmer became legends, dominating the 1970 Trans-Am series. Jones's nickname? The Boss, after the engine that carried him to 5 wins in 6 races. We'd push those engines till the headers glowed. They'd scream like banshees, but they never quit. But then, Chevy struck back. Mark Donohue's Camaro Z28, dubbed the Killer, vowed revenge. At Riverside 1970, cameras captured Donohue's car mysteriously bumping Follmer's Mustang into a spin. Ford cried foul. Was this racing or sabotage? It was a purpose-built warrior for one of the most intense battlegrounds in motorsport, the Trans-Am series. Mustangs locking horns with Camaro Z28s, Dodge Challengers growling on the straights, Pontiac Firebirds clawing through corners. This was the battlefield where legends were forged. And here's where everything flipped. Trans-Am racing wasn't built for quarter-mile showdowns or burnout bragging rights. This wasn't about who could roar the loudest in a straight line. It was war on wheels. Picture roaring engines flying into hairpin turns at breakneck speed. Imagine cars dancing through high-speed sweepers, lap after lap, hour after brutal hour. The Trans-Am series demanded more than just raw power. It demanded a machine that could survive the heat, hug the curves, and respond like an extension of the driver's body. It was about balance, endurance, pinpoint precision. Only the most complete machines could survive. And that's exactly where the Boss 302 came alive. While others overheated or broke down, the Boss kept charging forward. Faster, sharper, and more relentless with every corner it carved. That's where the Boss 302 came alive. It wasn't just fast, it was ferocious. Built with a chassis tuned for agility, a suspension dialed in for cornering, and an engine that could scream past 7,000 RPM without blinking. It drove like a European sports car, but had the heart of a Detroit beast. And in 1970, everything came together. The late nights, the engineering breakthroughs, the relentless testing. It all paid off in one explosive season. The Boss 302 Trans-Am series. It dominated. Ford stormed the circuit, going head-to-head with legends like the Camaro Z28, the Dodge Challenger TA, and the Pontiac Firebird. And guess what? The Boss crushed them all. With a perfect blend of agility, raw power, and endurance, the Boss 302 helped Ford claim the ultimate prize, the 1970 Trans-Am Championship. It was more than just a win. It was a statement, a declaration that this wasn't just some street machine with a pretty name. It was a race-bred warrior that could go toe-to-toe with the best in the world and come out on top. That moment didn't just prove what the Boss 302 was capable of, it etched its name into history. The streets took notice. The racers gave it respect. And in that very moment, a true American legend was born. Parnelli Jones. The Boss 302 was the best engine Ford ever gave me. It was bulletproof. We could run those things wide open all day long, and they just kept coming back for more. Jones famously nicknamed the car the Boss after the engine, cementing its legacy. George Follmer. That engine was a giant killer. Chevy thought they had us with the Z28, but the Boss 302 didn't just beat them, it humiliated them. It was like driving a scalpel in a world of sledgehammers. Bill Barr. We took the Windsor block's lightweight design and married it to Cleveland heads for maximum airflow. The result? An engine that could scream to 7,500 RPM without breaking a sweat. It wasn't just powerful, it was elegant. Bud Moore. We pushed those engines until the headers glowed cherry red. They'd come back with cracked blocks, but Ford kept sending us new ones. They wanted to win so bad they didn't care if we broke the rules. The Ford Boss 302 engine earned several nicknames from mechanics, engineers, and enthusiasts, reflecting its performance, design, and racing legacy. Below are the most credible and commonly referenced monikers. Giant Killer. Trans-Am, racing success against larger engines. Historical accounts in books like Mustang Boss 302, The Complete Story, highlight its underdog victories over bigger V8s. The engine's ability to outperform larger displacement rivals like Chevrolet's 350 cubic inch and Dodge's Hemi in the 1970 Trans-Am series. Screaming Demon. High-revving nature, up to 7,500 RPM, and distinctive exhaust note. Enthusiasts likened its sound to a demon's scream during races. Its Cleveland-style heads and aggressive camshaft profile created a banshee-like wail at full throttle. The Hybrid. Unique combination of a Windsor block and Cleveland cylinder heads. Interviews with Ford engineer Bill Barr, who described the design as a hybrid in technical documents. This blend of components maximized airflow and durability, making it a standout in Ford's lineup. Workhorse. Anecdotes from mechanics on the HAMB and vintage racing crews, who praised its endurance. Bud Moore's Trans-Am team famously pushed the engine to its limits without mechanical failures. Rev King. Exceptional high RPM capability. Racers admired its ability to sustain high revs. The engine's lightweight valve train and forged internals allowed it to thrive in road racing's RPM-heavy demands. Poor Man's Ferrari, retrospective car reviews, and books referencing the Boss 302 Mustang's agility. While often applied to the entire car, the engine's role in achieving this reputation earned it indirect credit. And then, instead of celebrating, Ford killed it. What exactly happened? Ford blamed new regulations. They blamed rising insurance costs. Does that really add up? Or was that just a convenient excuse? Muscle cars were still being built. Insurance hikes didn't stop other high-performance monsters from hitting the streets, so why single out the Boss 302? Was it really about safety and restrictions, or was there something bigger happening behind closed doors? Let's be real here. This wasn't just about rules and red tape. This was about money, power, control. The real answer would be that Ford didn't kill the Boss 302 because it had to. They killed it because it was too damn good. Why would a company shut down a high-revving, lightweight beast that was wiping the floor with the competition? Why would they get rid of an engine that was proving a small block could go head-to-head with the biggest, baddest muscle cars on the streets? Because that was bad for business. Ford was not just in the business of performance. They were in the business of selling dreams. Loud, aggressive, chrome-plated dreams. And those dreams came with massive engines that roared down highways and dominated magazine covers. We are talking about the 428 CJ and the 429 SCJ. These were monsters. Big, heavy, fire-breathing engines that chugged premium fuel like water and came with price tags that padded profits. These were the machines Ford wanted to sell. They looked powerful. They sounded menacing. They sold the idea of domination. And then came a problem. Or rather, a revelation. The Boss 302. It did not follow the script. It did not need 8 liters of displacement or boatloads of torque to prove a point. What it had was precision, efficiency, a high-revving heart, and razor-sharp engineering. It was smaller, lighter, and more affordable. But here is the twist. It was beating the big boys. On the streets, on the track, in real-world tests where pure engineering trumped brute force. This was not just an engine. It was the heart of rebellion with 4 wheels. While Ford was banking on thunder, the Boss 302 was bringing lightning fast, sharp, and impossible to ignore. It was out-handling, out-revving, and outsmarting the competition. And not just the rivals from Chevy or Dodge, it was threatening Ford's own lineup. Their own crown jewels were being overshadowed by this lean, aggressive street fighter. But enthusiasts never forgot. Because the Boss 302 proved something no boardroom ever wants to admit sometimes, smaller and smarter can leave a bigger impact than any oversized engine ever could. If you're running the show, do you keep selling the cheaper, lightweight, race-proven engine? Or do you push the big high-profit V8s? Exactly. Now here's the thing. Legends don't just disappear. They don't get erased from history. And the Boss 302? It refused to die. Enthusiasts like Ohio's Boss Bill discovered crated engines in forgotten warehouses. They were hiding these in barns, he laughs. Rumors swirl of a Black Ops Boss 302 with twin turbos, built for a 1971 Le Mans bid, Ford abandoned. 2023, a cryptic eBay listing offered a 1970 Boss 302 prototype, never titled. Was this Ford's lost monster? The listing vanished hours later. Coincidence or cover-up? Fast forward to today, and gearheads everywhere are restoring, tuning, and unleashing the true potential of this banned engine. The secret is out. Ford's own creation, the one they tried to shut down, was actually one of the greatest muscle car power plants ever made. And here's where it gets even crazier. Ford brought it back in 2012. The Boss 302 returned, a modern tribute to the legend. Let's be honest. Was it really the same? The new version was fast, sure. It was like a dream. Nevertheless, it didn't have the raw, untamed fury of the original. The 1969 Boss 302 was wild, unpredictable, and built with an edge that no modern factory car could truly replicate. What if Ford hadn't killed the Boss 302? Would today's Mustangs be hybrid turbocharged or nitro-breathing V8s? The Boss 302 was too good for its time. Why did Ford kill it? To protect profits. Was it the ultimate muscle car engine or a legend that never got its full shot? We believe those prototypes still lurk, waiting to rewrite history. Because some engines don't just fade away, they lie sleeping in junkyards. This is Paul from Rare Car Stories. Catch you next time.